Hi, everyone, and welcome to Shipping Agentic AI, the GTM Playbook. I'm Jennifer Kune, your instructor today, and I lead AI product marketing at Amazon Ads. I've spent nearly 20 years in product marketing and go-to-market strategy across ad tech, martech, and fintech. And at Amazon Ads, I lead a team that focuses on driving awareness, consideration, and adoption for AI creative solutions. Outside of work, I enjoy exploring local parks with my 3-year-old son and discovering new places around the city. So let's dive into the topics we'll cover today. First, we'll start with what we shipped, introducing our latest agentic AI solution that is just scaling worldwide as we speak, how we got there and moved from the idea to product market fit. Then I'll take you into the GTM Playbook, which will cover the key steps to bring agentic AI solutions like Creative Agent to life. And we'll then move into lessons learned, and finally close with the 4 key principles for shipping agentic AI. So let's get into it. So what's Creative Agent? Creative Agent is a conversational creative partner that helps advertisers and Amazon sellers bring creative concepts to life that they can use to produce ad campaigns on or off Amazon. The challenge that this product solved was helping agencies and advertisers who lacked time, resources, or funding to build high quality creative content that they could use to reduce their time to market and launch ad campaigns on Amazon or off Amazon. What's unique about this tool is that we at Amazon Ads have a variety of placements to help advertisers do things like build brand awareness, engagement, or conversion to drive sales on Amazon. An example of this on the left is an upper funnel streaming TV ad that Creative Agent can produce for advertisers seeking awareness on the big screen. A mid-funnel example is in the middle, where you can see an example of how we can help advertisers build online video or sponsored display campaigns to drive consideration. And then finally, our lower funnel example on the right side of the screen helps for advertisers who are more performance-driven and focus on driving direct sales on Amazon. Creative Agent really helps our customers across the funnel, regardless of what types of ad campaign they're launching, to build the creative content in little to no time. So now that I've talked to you about what it is, I'll show you an example and bring it to life. Let's take a look. So what you just saw is an example of how Creative Agent is helping our customers from the moment they have an idea to create a video ad, as an example, to concept through that idea, develop a storyboard, turn that storyboard into variations of videos, edit those videos, and even the audio, voiceover, and music components of the videos, select what they like, and at the end of the day, deliver the ad. All right, so let's take you into our product evolution. How we evolved our AI capabilities is an interesting story. I think everyone knows that Amazon has been in the space of deploying AI for many, many years. However, at Amazon Ads, we first evolved our AI creative capabilities back in 2023 with the advent of our image generation solutions. A simple prompt, like a lemon that looks like a basketball, was turned into a photorealistic image that could be used to launch display campaigns on Amazon Ads. Since then, in 2024, we took it to the next step, where that prompt could now turn into a lemon that looks like a basketball and move beyond photorealism into rich coloring and textures and even novel creative concepts. Fast forward to 2025, that same lemon that looked like a basketball could be prompted to look like lemon juice splashing around that basketball with a headline included. So we've moved over time from simple static imagery to photorealistic, eye-popping aesthetics and ad copy that could be brought to life in meaningful ways in your ad campaign. Bringing you back to Creative Agent, we evolved this AI solutioning set to agentic AI from a simple idea, which was how we could help our customers go from simply generating a creative to really conversing with us with a creative partner to develop that creative concept from start to finish. At the point of concept creation, it was the same moment that we developed our GTM definition. The reason why this was important was because we knew that in order to bring the concept to life, there were certain elements that had to be true. One was, who were we building the concept for? Having a deeper understanding of our customer archetypes and ideal customer profiles helped us get there. So creating that GTM definition and strategy up front enabled us to start thinking forward about what success would look like, who we were crafting our product for, and what product market fit would be in order to move from a beta phase to general availability. Once our concept was created and we had an initial go-to-market framework, we started developing the early prototypes and later testing those prototypes with real internal and initial friendly advertising users. Those usability tests help us to cement our exit criteria definition. In that early stage, we were able to quickly identify things as simple as wanting to prompt in a text window versus wanting to interact in a different way through simple one-click buttons like we had in past products. Another thing that it helped us to understand was the level of quality that our customers expected from us, even at the early prototyping stage. Once we had a great understanding of those requirements, we developed our minimum lovable product requirements and moved into alpha phase. In the alpha phase, we moved from sharing early prototypes and mocks to hands-on usage. There, we started segmenting our customers across small, mid-market, and large brands to understand the different ways our customers could use the solution. These insights helped us inform what was necessary to reach our closed beta stage and expand eligibility to more users. With those insights in mind, we were able to move into a closed beta phase where we opened up to hundreds of users and then able to analyze and gain insights in VOC from that user base to determine whether or not we had achieved product market fit. So I'll move you into the way our evolution of capabilities exists today. Fast forwarding to the end of last year, we have expanded from those simple static images to now full-on animation, a full photorealism, ad copy, and more to generate high-quality creative content for our customers. Now that you understand a bit more about how we got here for Creative Agent, I want to take you into more detail about the GTM Playbook. The Agentic AI go-to-market playbook is really a signal-driven approach to building, launching, and scaling AI products. There are 4 key phases that I'm going to cover, and I'll take you through each one, starting with signal intelligence. Signal intelligence is the first stage that helps us to identify the highest value customer problem and what to do to solve it. In this phase, you'll want to understand qualitative and quantitative product usage signals, industry information, and voice of customer insights. From an output standpoint, this data informs the customer problem statements that you'll create, your product requirements, and your minimum lovable product, as well as your initial exit criteria. The next phase after signal intelligence is the customer value architecture. In this phase, you define who the product is best fit for and why it wins in the marketplace. Here, you're going to define your ideal customer profile. You're going to identify the buyer personas, the jobs to be done for those customer profiles and personas, and then also the value proposition and what makes it different. The outputs for this stage will result in target audience definition, really cementing who it's for, and the key pain points that you must solve, your value proposition and positioning statements for what makes your solution unique, and the messaging hierarchy for each of those personas. Step 3 in the GTM playbook is adaptive go-to-market implementation. Now, in this phase, your focus is launching with coordinated and testable execution. Adaptive is key because you want a go-to-market framework that's going to be iterative so that you can evolve as you uncover new information. In this phase, you're aligning your product, marketing, sales, and launch strategy into an overarching content and messaging framework. You'll define the channels that you'll use to bring that product to market and create a sales enablement plan. Finally, you'll want to also enable a launch roadmap so that you know exactly when you'll launch and to whom. The outputs from here would be the broader marketing campaign, channel strategy, and sales activation plans, as well as the full product roadmap. Finally, at stage 4, your focus is optimization and scale. Here's where you're going to double down on what drives adoption and revenue. The learning loop is critical. You should have at this point already been incorporating inbound insights from your customer base, but here is where you're creating iterative improvements based on those insights and creating new mechanisms for enabling continuous insights along the way. These insights are going to inform the improvements needed to achieve product market fit and then scale your offering from there to general availability. It also helps to inform your roadmap refinement. The outputs here could look like a performance dashboard so that all of your teams and cross-functional partners are able to see the data and key metrics in one place and always optimize based on the learnings. It could also look like a feedback loop where you have an ongoing cadence with your sales or customer-facing teams to gain feedback from the users and or sales teams who are representing your customers. It'll also look like roadmap optimizations, so things that you may have planned on the roadmap that may need to shift due to higher pressing customer pain points and or needs that need to be resolved. And it will be your framework for scaling and a phased dial-up approach to reaching 100% of your target population. In summary, the Agentic Playbook really brings together the continuous cycle of GTM across your signals, your value, your execution, and optimization and scale. I'll pause here for a moment so you can take a screenshot of this and save it so that every launch for you can become a learning system that improves the next one. All right, so I'm going to move forward into what success looked like for a customer of ours that use creative agents. So Bird Buddy is a global smart bird feeder company. They're one of our early clients that had used Bird Buddy because they lacked the time and the budget to produce quality video campaigns beyond a few major holidays. Now, they did have an agency supporting them, but only funding to activate around high potential moments. However, there were other micro seasons that remained untapped. Using Creative Agent, their agency was able to compress what would have been months long video production into just 3 days. This enabled them to unlock a new opportunity to launch a campaign in a short amount of time and take advantage of the Father's Day seasonal moment. For Bird Buddy, this ended up driving a lift of 300% in their click through rate and a return on ad spend lift of over 120%. Now that you've gotten a sense for what the GTM playbook looks like and how our customers are benefiting from it, I'd like to introduce my special guest, Nikhil. Nikhil is the lead AI technologist at Amazon Ads. Nikhil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jen. I'm excited to be here. I'm a lead AI technologist at Amazon Ads working on creatives. Essentially, I was one of the folks working on building the creative agent that Jennifer just showed us, and have been there since the inception to its scaling. So I'm really excited to be here sharing some of my learnings, and thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us today. So, we're going to take everyone into the lessons learned Q&A style. Nikhil, my first question for you is how should product managers scale from prototype to a full-fledged product? What must they remember to do?
Good question. Like really hitting the heart of the development life cycle, as I like to say, with the first question. So essentially, whenever we are going from prototype to a full-fledged or a scale product, one thing to remember is to actually understand what the prototype was, because as the word says, it's a prototype. So that means it only works on certain cases, and most of the times it's always the happy paths that are being tested, that are being tried out. For example, while building the creative agent, the initial few iterations that we had, we actually learned that the models were not that great for what we call as soft lines categories, which are like clothes and stuff like that. But they were pretty good for hard lines or for beauty products. So when we decided to scale into our alpha phases, at that time we actually chose those DLs so that we could actually learn and get information so that we could build a good product for our customers. So that I would say is one of the biggest things to keep in mind when going from prototype to scaling, is to understand where your product functionality will actually meet the customer need, and it's going to be the intersection of both of them which makes a great product.
That makes a ton of sense. Thanks, Nikhil. My next question for you is around the technical architecture. Can you talk through some of the decisions that were made to enable speed and scale?
Yeah, definitely. So the important thing to know is we are right now in an innovation cycle. It's not just for AI, but in general, just the way we build software, just the way we build products. So the most important thing to keep in mind is to be flexible and to be adaptable. And that goes down not just for like us as individuals, but also for the software or the systems that are building at an architecture level. So, for example, the platforms that we are building right now, building software is actually much more cheaper. In the previously it used to take like months or years to build something. Now it takes weeks or days. So basically you can have a situation where you actually learn you get a groundbreaking, new concept that you can implement, and then what that means is you have to throw away what you have built, right? So being flexible and adaptable is super important, and that's what, like, you have to architect the entire system to be like that. What that means, for example, in the creative agent, we use different models, and the models are built as, like, plug and play, because anytime there is a new model, we should be able to just switch one out with the other, a better one. And the way we do that is just like, some simple config files that are there. So that's the whole trick of actually building a system which is architected for scale and for flexibility.
Yeah, that's such a great point, and I think it really brings together lessons one and two because you talked not only about the technical architecture for scale, but also the importance of working cross-functionally around the way. Can you share more about the trade-offs that you made and how you balanced things like speed versus robustness?
Great question. So trade-offs. I first want to preempt like this answer with we should never make trade-offs in isolation. What that means is we should always understand what exactly are the trade-offs, like as in like the name suggests, like the word suggests trade-offs. We are going to get something and we have to basically sacrifice something. Now, if you do that in isolation, engineering does engineering trade-offs, product does product trade-offs, that actually leads to sort of a misalignment in the roadmaps or in the product functionality that is there. So trade-offs we should always make as a team with the necessary data. Like the example that I gave about soft lines, we could have easily said, hey, you know what, until and unless the models are really up to date and are working for all of our products, we are not going to launch it. But no, our trade-off was, cool, let's actually restrict it for specific GLs where it works and then take it from there. Because every single time you launch something to production, you actually get information from your customer behavior. And that is super important because it also helps guide the next stages of the strategy. So, in terms of actually understanding the trade off, like the rule that or the principle that I always like to follow is always provide the data that if you do X, what are you going to get or what are you going to lose? And then it can be an informed decision in terms of, and it's a data driven decision, which there can be a single decision maker. That's a different story, but it needs to be an informed decision or an informed trade off that needs to happen.
Yeah, 100%. Can you dive a little bit deeper? You talked about the scale and the speed and iteration. What enables that continuously developing product, like an agentic AI solution, to improve?
I would say consistent feedback. And the feedback is not just from customers, it's from the product teams, it's from the PMM team, it's basically from anybody who is involved or who is directly or indirectly touching the product, so to say. Um, because like for example, when we built the creative agent, few of the things that we had not considered was showing the reasoning, like what exactly the creative agent is thinking behind the scenes. But in the initial days we had our alpha phase, which our product marketing team actually helped us with some of friendly advertisers, and that time many a times the creative agent would hallucinate. We also understood how much is the appetite from the customers for hallucination. We also understood that the advertisers actually wanted us to know, like to show what the creative agent was doing behind the scenes. Now, that was a very important data point because for me as an engineer, I want to hide all the complexity. And some of the reasoning that the agent does, as it's like looking up tools and everything, it's highly complex. And you don't want to show that out. So that actually had us take a step back and invent that customer experience, that advertiser experience, where we could show them, summarize like the thinking process of it. So the most important part of building a great product is you, in addition to rapid prototyping, is also consistent and early feedback. Like you always want someone to guide you so that you're not like wavering the path, because at the end of the day you have to work backwards from the customer, but you also have to work forwards from the technology. And then a great product is at the intersection of both of these.
Yeah, I think that's such a valuable insight. You talked about how it's every stakeholder that touches the product, and I think oftentimes teams who might be lean or strapped for resources forget that there's so many internal team members that are part of the process, like user experience teams, partner teams, customer success teams. So if you don't have the resources, lean in on those cross-functional peers to help you gain the insights you need to move to the next phase of the process.
I, I want to like tell a sort of an interesting story on that front where like in the early days we were basically we were doing evaluations to figure out like what is good, what is bad, and so on and so forth. And when we are doing evaluations, because we are considering so many things at scale, just like a small scrappy team like looking at the same outputs over and over again, it starts to become daunting. So we came up with the idea of actually having pizza parties or pizza moderations, or pizza evaluations, like we like to say, where essentially we scale it out. We have multiple people there. We buy pizza for everyone, and you're just supposed to then evaluate like a small chunk. Now, because you have like more than, let's say, 5 people looking at it, you can get more done, and it just costs a pizza, you know? And so, like, there's a lot of power in pizza. Remember that.
100%. This is great, Nikhil. Can you walk us through the best way to evaluate the AI outcomes in order to inform the product market fit?
Yes, definitely. I mean, good segue from the previous answer as well. So the evaluation part is, I would say, one of the biggest. I don't want to call it bottleneck, but one of the most critical elements of actually making a great product, because we don't like, especially for stuff like creative agents, the outputs are subjective. What looks good to me might not look good to you. So getting diverse opinions is actually super important. So what we used to do is, we first established what we call as a golden data set, where we had these representative different products, these representative different categories, with which we generated, we ran the creative agent conversations, we generated the outputs, and then anytime we would have a new model come, we would run through these representative samples. And if the output was better than the previous one, then we would just swap out the model. And the way it was defined as better was either through scaled evaluation with internal to the team, like I said, pizza parties, or it could even be shown to the advertisers to do like an A/B test, like what makes sense over here. Is this better or is this better? And you like you would be surprised how many advertisers are actually willing to help us improve the product, because they are also passionate about their contribution and how the product is improving.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's a great segue too into our third lesson learned, which is around measuring what matters. Can you talk about some of the metrics that mattered as you embarked on this?
Definitely. So, a few things from a product perspective, which were very important. And by the way, we didn't come up with it. Like the product teams as well as the PMM team helped us, because me as an engineering leader, I'm only looking at latency and stuff like that. Like I'll get to that in a second. But actually, our product team as well as our PMM team helped us explain what the advertisers really cared about. They cared about how many turns or how many conversations are happening. Just as an example, the quality of the outputs that is there, how many times, like, the creative agent is straying, like is going astray, and we have to bring it back. And then these became sort of success criteria, that like we have to reduce the number of turns, we have to reduce the amount of times the creative agent is actually getting confused. So those were sort of the product use cases. There were a few others which I know that you track very closely. I'll let you get into that. Let me cover the engineering part of it, where a few other things like latency was super important for us. Where the like I mean, me as an engineer, if I look at 2 minutes or 4 minutes, it takes for our videos to generate. I was like, no, this needs to be faster. But when we looked at it with the advertisers, they were like, oh, yeah, this is fine. I'm fine to wait for 4 minutes, because normally they would wait for weeks. So it's a it's an order of magnitude difference, right? Hence, it is super important for us to also look at those metrics. So some non-functional metrics that we look at is the latency, the number of errors that we see on the back end, because these confusion scenarios that I just mentioned, those actually get logged as errors. But let you go through some of the other product side requirements from adoption perspective.
Yeah, and I get this question a lot from either product managers or product marketers about, well, what metrics should I track? And I think really the answer is working back from your user journey. So if you think through the journey that your users have to take from the moment they first interact with your product, as they use the product, and to when they finish and leave the product experience, those are the key metrics that you'll want. From our perspective on Creative Agent, we were looking at upper funnel metrics like how many users actually reached our ingress to the Creative Agent. And then once they got there, how many began a conversation? And then once they did, how many abandoned and how quickly did they abandon versus how many stayed and completed the generation and creation of that asset? And then finally, how many then continued through the funnel, saved that asset, and launched a campaign? So these are the types of metrics that helped us know that we were successful. So let's move on to another question that I think is very common for working with engineering. Are there any watchouts or risks that teams should keep in mind when working with engineers?
Yes, definitely. So more than gotchas or anything, like I like to really stress this point that like don't treat engineering as a separate team. It's important that everyone feels like one team, like one cohesive unit, because you will find that engineers are actually interested in how the product is being developed, understanding the hypothesis, why certain decisions are being made. Many a times, what ends up happening is like you just get a line of business requirements, and then the engineer goes and develops. Now, that doesn't really help the engineer be empowered. But if you actually explain the why to it, sometimes you would end up encountering that even a better idea comes out because the engineers are looking at it from a different perspective. Again, it's super important to know that it's all about having diversity of opinions and diversity of perspectives, which actually makes a great product. So I'll go back to like the very first lesson is like make sure like you act as one team, as one system. Even when you're prototyping, prototype together. Like the way Creative Agent was actually born was like an engineer, a scientist, and a product manager along with the PMM team actually prototyping, trying to figure out what makes a great offering. So that's super important.
Thank you, Nikhil. Very helpful insight. So, my final question for you is, can you tell me, as you look back at the key lessons that you've learned, is there anything you would have done differently?
Um, Probably the one thing that I would have done differently would be I would have pushed for Creative Agent a little bit sooner and a little bit more rigorously. What I mean by that is the way Creative Agent was born was actually us writing a two-pager back in June of 2024 and getting it reviewed with like the ads leadership. But at that time, the whole concept of agentic was not really there. So Creative Agent was kind of a side of the desk, like a garage project or something like that. And then by the time it actually took steam, it was around October. And then um, we actually built the whole product strategy. And then 6 months later, we actually released it, right? Now, in hindsight, I just feel that we should have kept on pushing it from June onwards itself so that we could have even launched it sooner. But hey, you know what? Like, it's an amazing journey to go from conceptualization, understanding early product to releasing it in GA in like less than a year. That's amazing. In like 6 to 8 months, that's amazing. At scale, that's the best part.
Agreed. And I think from a go to market perspective, the biggest lesson I learned was the importance of understanding the mechanism in which you're going to capture those inbound insights up front and sharing that expectation with whoever's providing the feedback early on can help ensure that you're getting that continuous feedback cycle. What we learned is that early on we were doing um, interview style meetings to get the insights that we needed about what was working and our experience. But over time, as we scaled to more customers, we had to pivot to surveys. But what we didn't do is ensure that the customers who were onboarding with us had the expectation up front that surveys would be the requirement to ensure that we have the feedback we need. So it ended up being harder to get the insights and get the survey responses, I think, than it would have been if we had really set the mechanisms up front and set the expectation with the teams who would provide the feedback to get it to us in a timely manner.
Yeah, definitely. And just the feedback, also the metrics and the measurements. We should never forget the metrics because those are super important. Because always remember, you can only improve what you measure. So in addition to, like, the lesson number 3, measure what matters, it's also, if you want to improve something, start measuring it. That was, I would say, another lesson in hindsight for me.
Yeah, great point. Well, this is really great, Nikhil. Thank you so much for your time. I think I'll bring us into the key takeaways for today. There were 4 key things that we learned. The first I'll cover is prototyping with purpose. We talked about building towards real customer problems. It's not about building what seems cool or fun or trendy, but truly grounding your prototypes in key customer pain points to ensure that on the back end, once you launch, you're actually able to drive meaningful adoption because you're solving a real need. Next is evaluate for the real world. It's important that as you build your evaluation frameworks, they're built against live revenue critical environments. We know that today, as Nikhil mentioned, it's all about speed. Things change at the drop of a dime. New models are coming out, product is having to evolve and iterate. And so it's important that the way we set up our evaluations are based on real world use cases. Next is GTM is the product. So once you concept and come up with your initial idea, go to market starts right there. It's not about waiting until after a product has already reached beta or you're getting ready to release and scale to GA. It's really about establishing your adoption strategy from the start. And then finally, cross functional teamwork is a superpower. I think what you've seen today firsthand is that the best AI products are built at the intersection of product marketing and engineering. So, with that, I'll take you over to our QR code to get started and try Creative Agent today. We thank you so much for your time.